Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches, where we connect compassion with needs as we inspire growth with dignity. You'll find us in special places throughout the community. For those who remain hungry, we provide meals. For those who are challenged, we build wheelchair ramps. We comfort those who are ill, minister to those who are confined, and we remain an advocate for change and understanding on behalf of every element of our community. Connect and inspire. Encounter the Broome County Council of Churches.
Brothers and sisters, welcome to the Encounter program sponsored by the Broome County Council of Churches. I'm your host, Mark Kimpland, the pastor at the Endwell United Methodist Church. In these turbulent times of our health pandemic, we find ourselves in the middle of racial tensions. And so the show today is going to center on the understanding of racism, to take time to listen and ponder and discern where we are and where we might be headed. My guest today is Miesha Marzell, who is an assistant professor at Binghamton University in social work, as she shares some of her insights regarding this very sensitive but important topic of racism. I've invited some brothers and sisters to come and be with me and to be in conversation with me and all of us around the issue of racism. And over the next few weeks, I have asked some brothers and sisters that I admire, that I think would bless us with their insight, that would bless us with perhaps some of their experiences, to come and just talk. Last week we heard from Bishop Webb, and over the next few weeks I'm excited about what is about to unfold. Because again, what has been coming to me in these turbulent times has been the message from God to simply listen. To just listen. To put all of my preconceived understandings and my culture and my upbringing and all the things I think I know, to just put that on the back burner for right now, and to have this unique blessing to just listen and engage. And so I have invited our sister Miesha Marzell to join me this Sunday. Miesha, welcome. I am glad you are here. We've been back and forth with emails and phone calls and all kinds of things that have brought us to this moment. But before we engage in conversation, I would like to share with you her bio that I took from the Binghamton University website, where she is a faculty member, and it says this. Miesha Marzell completed her master's in social work at the University of Southern California and her PhD in behavioral health at the Pennsylvania State University. Prior to joining the faculty of the Binghamton University Department of Social Work, Dr. Marzell was a postdoctoral fellow at the University of California, Berkeley School of Public Health and Prevention Research Center, and was subsequently the assistant professor in the Department of Community and Behavioral Health at the University of Iowa College of Public Health. As a researcher, she is interested in the etiology and prevention of high-risk substance use and the improvement of mental health among racial and ethnic minority youth, college students, and athletic populations. Dr. Marzell's research interests also extend to the environmental and policy factors that can influence behavior and promote healthy lifestyles. She wants to translate scientific evidence into recommendations for substance abuse prevention, public policy, and clinical practice. Again, welcome, and thank you for taking this time to merely be in conversation. And let's begin here, as much for me as to those who are watching today and the days to come. Can you paint a little picture for us about Miesha? Maybe your upbringing, your background, your childhood, wherever you want to take that. I'd like to join spirits together and travel down that road with you, if you could reflect on that for a moment.
Well, it's so wonderful to be here with you right now, and this church has been a blessing to me in this community. I'm looking down at my shoes right now. It represents California, my Chuck Taylors, right? But my Aunt Helen would be like, well, did you run to church? She would be like, oh my gosh, did you really get up here with some Chucks on? But I was sitting there when we were listening to This Is My Father's World. And my father, Howard Marzell, he passed away in this month 7 years ago. I was pregnant with my daughter, and so it struck me because this is my father's world. So he was born in 1934 in Colfax, Louisiana. Moved to Tyler, Texas. Definitely 1934 was a time of still a segregated United States. Like I was telling you, my mother, Linda Marzell, she was 15 years younger. And Daddy used to always call her a little hippie. She was born in Berkeley, California. And so I was raised by these two wonderful people, and my dad, he had this strength, and he, as you will hear, terms unapologetically black. He necessarily wasn't out maybe protesting like my mom did in Berkeley during that time of People Park and the civil rights movement that she participated in, but he raised me in a way of being strong. And so when I listen to the education that they didn't have. My grandfather didn't have the opportunities to have the education that I have, that Sarah will have. It's a beautiful time to kind of recognize that right now too. But then also to know this is my father's world, that with the events that we just have been experiencing, what has changed, he would be, gosh, I don't do math well, especially not in public, but he would be in his 80s right now, 80, 85, and it would be a hard time for him, but then it would also be a time where, we would be, out water skiing and out, doing hiking and living in God's country, and us having conversations of what can we do to continue to make things better.
That's a great segue, because let's go back to that childhood and that strong father and the hippie mother and all that.
If you saw their wedding pictures, you would think they were, oh gosh, that was a hot mess, but go ahead.
Are there things that you remember that were being taught to you, or experiences maybe that your mom and dad had that was kind of a proving ground or along the idea of racial relations and such things that may have maybe produced the framework that you developed as you moved into life? Do you remember? Can we take you to the dinner table maybe as to some of those conversations that you remember?
I think that, I will say that there's a really great book that I'm reading right now by Dr. Kendi, and he talks about anti-racism, and we can spend, hours talking about that right now. I'll only just give that source, that as I'm starting to dive into it, I think that's a great question that you asked, Pastor Mark, because I was a black female, I didn't have those types of conversations at the dinner table. For one thing, both of my parents worked. My dad worked for General Motors for 45 years. He would go downstairs with my mom, and the kids ate upstairs. So we didn't they were not having dinner with us. They were going to spend their time together. But those moments of just having conversations with my dad about, I remember when I ran for, I think I was in middle school, and I ran for president of something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, whatever you do, like class president. I don't know if you have that in middle school. and I was prepping for it, and I was doing everything for it. And he was having talks with me about it and encouraging me, but then also prepping me. I'm not gonna cry, but he also knew that that's not the world that he lived in. And so he had to prepare me too, is that it doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how hard you work. Sometimes this world is not going to be fair to you. But he didn't want to crush my spirit, you know?
Yes.
But that was a balance
Oh.
that he and my mom always had to do with me. And sometimes it's like reflecting on that now as a mother, as an older person. Now, 45 is still kind of young, right?
Yes, it
Okay,
is.
thank you.
45 is very young, yes.
But I look back now, and in those years, I didn't understand all of that because it wasn't this direct of a conversation. And none of this is new, right? So it's not like you sit down and, okay, we're going to have a race talk. You know, it's it's not that.
So how did you handle that then? I mean, you knew it was something, and you saw that your father's
Yeah.
balancing it. How do you do that?
How you do that is like you go up and you do your best. And then it doesn't matter win or lose. Then you come back the next day and you continue to do your best because you have the support. And you have the love. And I think that as a community, as growing up with, as a black person in this world, is like you keep picking yourself back up sometimes when you have the losses, you know? But there's examples of that in the Bible too, you know? And you have faith and you have hope, and you keep showing back up, and hopefully with the love and the support of others around you, and there's countless stories in the Bible about that, and that's what we're seeing right now too. Is like it's not about, you know I was worried about this. It wasn't talking about a shaming or a blaming kind of situation, and it's not. We know what kind of world we live in, and we know that there's disadvantaged groups of individuals, and that's where, we get our strength from Jesus. We get our strength from his example. We get our strength from our Lord, that we go out and we do the best that we can to, we strive for the best that we can to change what we see. And even getting back to that book that I'm reading about anti-racism, and Dr. Kendi, is just like we need to, it's not enough to say I'm not racist,
Right.
It's about being anti-racist.
Yes.
And that's when we talked about too, is Jesus was a protester.
Yes, he was.
Now
doubt.
I'm not a protester like out in the streets. I talked to a student a couple days ago. I know I got about like 5 minutes.
No, you keep going. You keep rolling. Don't you stop.
Okay. I talked to a student. I was like, I'm not. I'm not going to be out in the streets right now. I did some of that before, and peacefully, and as they are as well. But there's different lanes that we all are traveling down right now, but we need to travel down those lanes, and we need to own those lanes of giving love and compassion and stepping in. Part of my education right now has led me, I'm in social work right now, and I'm in public health too, and to be in these two different types of pandemics, right? We've got a social justice pandemic that's been going on for decades more than decades, centuries, and then we have this now, this infectious disease, coronavirus pandemic, and to be able to do work in that, to, I'm volunteering right now with the New York State contact tracing program. And it's like there's so many different ways that we can make differences. There's so many ways that the church can make a difference. And I think why we're having this conversation is the church can't be silent.
No. Right.
We have to embrace the social ills or social things that are going on in our country, and be there for one another, support one another. We wear masks to protect one another, and so we need to make change around race too, and the social justice and what we witnessed with Mr. Floyd's killing, a few weeks ago. We need to make changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because that's very helpful, because the intent of these conversations that I think God put on my spirit was to first recognize the obvious. If people are tuning in right now, you and I look very different. We come from different backgrounds, but we are still brothers and sisters. Mm-hmm. We still love each other. We still can cooperate. But in the midst of all of that, there's things that we need to understand and recognize. And I'd like to get your take on this, because I heard this just the other day, and it kind of helped me kind of sort some things out, because, and here it is, and I'd like to get your take on it if I could. And the lecturer was discussing the difference between prejudice and racism. And I never understood it this way. I'd like to get your take on it. He equated prejudice as a personal thought process and behavior, that I can personally prejudge someone or overgeneralize someone, and prejudice is something that's done person to person, thought to thought, and I can act in a way that prejudices someone else or puts them into submission. Where racism, what the speaker was saying, is more of a structural, institutional kind of thing that can certainly lead to prejudice, no doubt about it, but the racism can be covert, overt, recognized, unrecognized, but we still live in that system as corporate culture. When you hear that, does that resonate with you? Because I'm all about definitions. I think so many times, whether it's the church or just culture, we get hung up on, we think we're defining the same thing, but we're not.
We're not.
Yeah. And so I'm asking a lot of my brothers and sisters that question. Does that make sense, where prejudice is more of an internal one-on-one relationship and racism is more of a structural, institutional thing that we live within?
Yeah, and you know what, I'm not an expert on any of this, and my thing is so racism, definitely, I think when we start thinking about that systemic racism, when we think about policies and those having to change, that is definitely where I feel like we need to shift towards, because it's not about changing somebody's mind. You know, we all have biases. We all have unconscious biases at times. My friend, I love her. She's in South Carolina. She just moved from Binghamton, born and raised here. And she's a runner. And so I'm doing my little walk now while we're talking. And so she was saying, Miesha, now I'm running on, I see a man and he's a black man. I'm not crossing the street. I'm going to run. And I'm like, okay, Sarah, that's great. So, another Sarah, beautiful name, Sarah. And so I was like, that's wonderful. I was a runner too.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I remember one time specifically being in the trails near Georgetown, and I was running, and I saw these white men. They didn't have much hair. I looked at them, and I was like, I'm turning right back around and going. Because it's not so much about race then, it's about also we as women are not safe in this country.
Yes.
We're not safe in the world. And so therefore, Sarah, it has nothing to do, I'm glad if you were in a place that you can feel comfortable not crossing the street when you see a male, then that's fine. But we're still living in a world that, we have to have, when I talk about these biases, and this is where I'm totally going off the tangent of what you're talking about, but there's still some common sense in some of this that we're talking about, and these definitions, we can't get so hung up in them.
Yes.
We are human. Yes. We have biases. We can be racist, whether you're black, brown, we can have biases.
Yes.
When you act on them, when you have privilege and power in this world that in terms of race, white people do have, then that's the issue. That's the problem that can't continue to go. on, because you are disempowering a group, you are disenfranchising a group of folks, you are not protecting the lives of individuals, but it doesn't mean that, those biases exist with everybody. It's how you act on them. But from the structural sense, I completely get what you're talking about. Policies need to change, and that's where, I'm a scientist. So I don't like to deal with, even if with social work and public health, I don't try to change emotions, I try to change policies. I try to change environments that students aren't at risk when they drink, or if they drink, they're going to be able to come home and they're going to be safe. Because me telling them not to drink,
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
it's human behavior sometimes,
yes.
but if we can change structural policies, that's when change happens. Now, here's the thing. We need to talk more about this.
Amen.
Because you can't do that in 20 minutes.
Amen.
Okay?
Absolutely.
And so I might have said things that people might disagree with, and I get that, but it's complex.
Yes.
But to be able to have these conversations right now, and not saying that we haven't had them in the past, but to use this time in a pandemic where we are sitting still, where we have time to rest, forced rest, but God is giving us the time to see, to change, and to do better. That's but what you just said, oh my gosh, that's a lot.
It is.
Okay.
And we need, you are 100% correct. We need to do this more. And I'll push back on what you said one time,
Okay.
that the church has not done what they should be doing, that the church has not engaged. Because here's the thing, you're the scientist, I'm the theologian. And being a pastor of a church, I've done it time and time and time and time again, where something happens, something explodes, something is real and it's raw, and whatever it is, whether it's racial relations or whatever, we then come in on Sunday morning and have our holy huddle, and we close the world off. And I've done that throughout my career, where we just kind of come and pray our little prayers and oh Lord, bless me, don't worry about the people out there. And I think we're very, very guilty of that. And I guess I've reached a point in my ministry that enough is enough, that we need to have this time. We need to speak difficult truth. And even take time to uncover that difficult truth. And that's really what I'm hoping, and I'm confident that at least this is a start, not an end. This is a beginning. The race has just begun, my friend. It is. So what's your hope? What's your hope?
My hope is that you just ended on the race, and being that it's like that we understand that this is a marathon and not a sprint. Like you said, that we don't take this time. I read this article in New York Times. It's like, look, we've been here before, but we have distractions, right? We can go into the movies, or we can go, but now we are kind of quarantined, right, in some kind of way at some of these points, and we're not able to. So we can't sprint through these things like you just alluded to. This is a marathon, and it's also, one of my colleagues said, this is a relay. I think that at times that, in terms of when we're talking social justice and racial, it's like, it's always the people of color, or it's always in this, situation with, Black Lives Matter or Black people. It's like, we're the ones who are supposed to run the entire race. No, let's be relay, have a relay and pass
That's
it off
awesome.
to one another. And
that's what God wanted me to hear this morning.
Yes, we need to have relays.
Oh,
and
that is
relays,
profound.
And I'll end when I wasn't I was a 4x4 in high school. When I got to college, I wasn't that fast anymore, but sometimes I got to sneak on. And you put different legs, different people who run different legs, because they have different strengths.
Yes.
And it's our owning our strengths. We're not supposed to be alike. We're not supposed to, God, if he wanted us all alike, I mean, I think he could have done that.
He probably could have.
Could have, right?
Yeah.
And he doesn't want that. And so it's just like owning what gifts that you have and what contributions you can make to that relay. And I think what I see is even in that analogy is like we're just always running our own races. When you were talking about the churches inside and what's on the outside,
Yes.
it's like, let's not run our own races. Let's run together, you know.
Yeah.
Let's do a distant medley. Go look that one up. Let's have different races, but
that is
it's the
absolutely
same.
what God
Yeah.
wanted me to hear then. That's a profound thought, because it kind of takes me right back to where we started, and we'll end here, Miesha. I could talk another few hours, but we might lose our audience. You were talking about your dad, you know, that both sides, the supportive role and the realist role. Mm-hmm. And that's a delicate balance. Mm-hmm. And so's the relay, because we're different, mm-hmm. but we're so much more alike. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's moving through that delicate balance of those similarities and differences, all under the understanding that this indeed is our Father's world. We were created by one God, and we are all children of God, and embracing all of that. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart, because I needed to hear that this morning, and thank you for your tears. I mean that. Thank you for your emotion.
They come all the time.
Thank you for being you, and I truly appreciate that.
I take this time again to thank our sister Miesha Marzell for sharing her thoughts and wisdom with us. And so, brothers and sisters, I thank you for joining us either via the radio or the television for this very, very important topic. And I hope and pray it was a blessing to you. And so be well, stay well, be in love with one another, and may God bless you this day and all of your days. Have a wonderful day.